Welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. I am Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org. Today is Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is episode 14, Shadow Work Part 12. We're going to be getting into epistemology. And I guess technically it's learn how to think part 4. But I got rid of that part, shorten it up. And the Great Work Launchpad is an effort to get people to get initiated into the great work. And if you want to learn more about that, well, check out the earlier podcasts, and so anyone can come on and have their say on a topic. Come on for a few minutes, or you can stay for the discussion the whole time. And if you want some motivation, you can contact me to see. I can give you homework, give you a topic if you want to talk about something, learn how to present. You can go ahead and contact me, and I can help you figure out something to talk about. So we have two people joining us. We have Jerry and Derek. How's it going, guys?
Good. How are you?
All right.
Bonjour.
Hello. So everything looks good. All right. Epistemology. So we've talked about it a bit, I think, in every episode in the past 3 weeks on Learn How to Think. When it relates to the trivium, it relates to the part in my inverted triangle model. It's the part with logic, processing, and to develop understanding. So epistemology is about, the word is the study of knowledge. So in the study of knowledge, first you have to know what knowledge is. So part of the study of knowledge is to understand what is knowledge. And another big part of epistemology is, how do you know what you know? So first you have to know what knowing is, and then how do you know what you know? So I guess I could give a brief overview and we can get more into it. So knowledge itself, you could look up definitions. And it's usually, when you look into epistemology, like you go into philosophy, it's related to truth. And it is, but not only. That's just, how do you know that something is true? That's the second part. But knowledge can be, when you look at the trivium, that's the input. Knowledge, the grammar. And when you think about grammar, that's like the structure of language in order for you to understand, to comprehend what is being said. And that's also part of knowledge. You could look at knowledge as the information coming in and then making sense of it. Well, that's part of knowledge as well, and that's tied to understanding. So it's hard to there's no clear-cut lines between knowledge and understanding. So that's one way of looking at it. And also knowledge, when we use the word knowledge, so one way I like to refer to this aspect of understanding knowledge is when you say, someone could say, hey, do you know about this? And you could say, oh, no, I don't know about that. What is that? So it could be a topic, could be a person, could be something that happened. So that's knowledge about something, about a claim of something having occurred or someone existing or whatever. So it's about a claim of truth. And then there's knowledge of it being true. So you can knowledge about it, and someone could tell you something and you don't know if it's true or not, but now you know about that idea, that concept, that thing, that person, etc. And then there's knowledge of it being true. So that's how I like to look at knowledge. So the first part's more like awareness of something. So if you're not aware of it, you don't have knowledge, so you could be ignorant of it. And that's why knowledge, the opposite of knowledge, would be ignorance. And then you need to go deeper is to whether that knowledge, that thing you're aware of, well, is it true? Is it not true? Is it that idea? Is there something more behind it, or is it just bullshit, or is it a mix of both? And the importance of epistemology, we've already talked about it, understanding and the logic and processing, so that you can be more informed to take actions, to be more wise. But it relates to mind control. Because what if I can get you to accept something that isn't true? Do you think that will affect your view of the world or yourself? Do you think that will affect your behavior as a result of that affecting how you think of yourself, or how you think of the world, or how you think what is true in the world? So if I can get you to accept something that isn't true, I can get you to do things that you wouldn't do if you had the truth instead. So a part of that is the blame is on the individual for believing the falsity that the person provided them, but there is a responsibility of each person to, when you're saying something is true, that you have done that second part of epistemology, is how do you know that something is true, that you've done that verification process. So if you don't do that, then you're just trusting the other person, or you're taking what they're saying and then you're like, oh, that sounds good, yeah, then you accept it as truth. And then it could be that the person was wrong and they didn't know it. But the point I'm talking about in the more malicious kind of mind control is where someone is malevolent and they're doing malicious, willful deception, where they know something is true, but they're going to propagate a falsity knowingly to get you to accept something that isn't true, that will then affect your understanding of the world, and thereby your navigation, your maneuvering, and the behavior you take in the world as a result. So that's the mind control. To get you to think things that are divergent from the way reality is, or from what a truth is, and to do things based on that. And that's a large part of the world that we live in, is that people don't know how to think. And that's the point of epistemology, is understanding, that's the fourth part of learn how to think. The epistemology part is that's why I view the logic part as the core of it, the most important in my view. They're all important, the three parts of the trivium, but that one is crucial because it's going to affect how you're going to understand things in the world, understand yourself, and thereby your actions and behavior in the world. And when people can manipulate this due to your lack of awareness, of having honed this ability to think, that you don't know how to think properly, then they're going to be able to manipulate you and control you, not physically, but by controlling your mind, control your behavior, because they can influence your mind to accept things, which will thereby limit the potential choices that you will engage in, which limit the potential actions you create and the potential results that are created in reality that can affect reality as a result of all those previous potentials. So when you restrict people's thinking, restrict their imagination, which is also a core part of mind control, along with not being able to think critically, then you're going to be able to control, not directly, but indirectly, and you'll be able to channel people into certain modalities of behavior, and create certain outcomes in the world that are what you want by manipulating them into producing that outcome, more or less. And so epistemology, essentially, if you want to boil it down, it's being able to discern truth from falsehood. And as Soren Kierkegaard says, there's two ways to be fooled. One is to accept what isn't true, and the other is to reject what is true. So I'll pass it to you guys if you want to add anything on that.
Yeah, sure. So, we all have to understand the basic foundational aspects of the trivium, as you mentioned. And logic sorry, grammar, logic, rhetoric. That's one aspect, but also, running through your mind on all these different things that come into our reality field of answering the question of the who, what, where, when, why, and all these things that come to us and all this stuff. And that's also taking into practice of how to learn how to think for yourself and trying to answer these questions on your own, but also going through eclectic aspects of information that you can come across, even like opposing aspects, and you kind of see some of the inconsistencies, some of the logical fallacies, and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think epistemology, we have to apply our life experience to these things. We have to, we learn about certain things. How are we applying them to our lives and testing them to see if they're actually valid and applicable? And, you know, do they pass the test of, okay, these people say like this works so much for them, even, taking magnesium, even, I saw something just rubbing some magnesium, infused gel on your feet. Apparently that, helps you out in the next day. You wake up more fresh. And so you learn about these things. Okay. You see some comments and that kind of stuff. People might have tried it and denied it or validated it. How do you as the individual see that? Have you tried it yourself? You don't know sometimes until you try sometimes. So yeah, I think that is a key aspect of this whole realm of the integration of information that so many truth seekers seem to fall short of sometimes, unfortunately, in regards to, okay, you learn these things, yet you're not applying them properly to your life. And it's kind of obvious for those who have the eyes to see. So what's holding you back, yo? Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, and there's just easy ways to go about this. It's not some fucking ancient Chinese secret or rocket science to do this, This is the launch pad, liftoff, like start from the foundation as Kris has, built up over the past, 12 episodes, and cross pollinate that information with so many other things that are out there within and outside of the One Great Work Network. And, you know, and again, apply these things to your life. Do that deep introspection and do some course correction of some previous faulty behaviors that weren't really, serving you all that best and those around you. So, yeah, I'm glad to have you guys around me. Jerry, what's good? We just chatted yesterday on One Great Work Warriors. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Derek. So, what's coming up for me right now is how important logic is really. I'm understanding that now because I think the problem with people not doing the great work might be because I'll take me, for example, I'm not all that organized in my mind. So maybe I leave doing the great work to one day, maybe, and it never gets done because it's not concrete of a goal. But once I organize that goal, as in, okay, I'm going to attend Kris's show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Now I actually have a concrete goal and I can make sure I'm not doing anything else to attend that and maybe speak some truth. But without that logic, that organized mind, then I have a bunch of knowledge, but I'm not doing anything with it. And I think that is not useful. So that's what I got.
Cool. Yeah, and just like taking it further, you can say, I'm going to, in the next week, write a 500 or 1,000 word article on a topic, and you can just pick any topic, and or you can do a video. So I'm going to do a 5-minute video about a topic. I find that if you're starting out, writing is probably easier because you have the time to formulate your thoughts versus just going live, and then you haven't collected all the pieces and formalized it in a more logically structured way, which you have a lot more time to do with writing. I guess that's why I started that way, was with writing. And yeah, if you need to set yourself like state goals or something and like agenda it even mentally, like put it in a mental agenda, then that's a good way to do it. and then at least you're setting an intent, and then you have to follow through, like abracadabra to create as you speak, create as I say. Well, if you say you're going to do it, then do it. And you got to make some objective, some real objective, other than this amorphous, ambiguous, I'm going to start the great work. Okay, but where? What do you do? Well, that's why you got to start on something. And so pick a topic and, go through What on Earth is Happening podcast, and you can go to the first episode, and Passio has like keywords for all of his episodes, and you can just read through there, and then like, oh, love or fear or truth or solipsism. You just pick one, and then you learn more about it, and you write something, and 500 words isn't much, and then you'll be like doing 500 words, and you'll be like, yeah, all right, these 500 words, they don't cut it. I got more to say. That's not enough to explain things. So then you got to up it to like 1,000, and then eventually you can go to like 2,000 and get more deep on explanations of things. But yeah, maybe that's some aspect that people don't have. That's a good point to bring up, where you have to set yourself specific goals, not just general, overarching, like do the great work. Well, what does that mean? What do I do? Yeah, so you got articles you can write, set a specific word count. When you reach that, you can stop. If you're not used to it, it can be overwhelming when you start trying to write too much. And yeah, pick a topic. Pick one topic. You can be more specific. Instead of talking about truth in general, because that's a big topic as well, you could say, talk about, I don't know, what happens when you don't have truth. What's the problems with not having truth? Or I've done why is truth important? I've written about that. So there's a lot of ideas on different ways you can go about it, but you got to be specific. Yeah, when you want to start off, then that gives you like a target that you can actually accomplish, other than some ambiguous thing that doesn't have a specific task to accomplish. You need steps, so that's a good way to lay out those steps and get started. So that's a good point to bring up, and hopefully could help some people get initiated into the great work like we're talking about here in this whole podcast series. So what was the next thing? Oh yeah, what Derek mentioned regarding magnesium. Yeah, people can use it for like muscle soreness. So you can like take a magnesium bath. It helps with like muscle soreness, I guess maybe after a workout, or if you're having soreness in general. And it can also help with constipation. It's a laxative, so people can use it for that. So if you ever have constipation, you can take magnesium pills, and it'll unblock you. I don't know how it works, but there you go. It's natural. You don't have to take that polyethylene glycol prescription from the pharmacist. Put plastic into your body to make you poop. So thinking. So we're talking about thinking and the purpose of thinking. So what do we do when we think? Right? We have critical thinking as well. Can we have non-critical thinking? Is all thinking critical thinking, or is there thinking that's non-critical thinking? Or when we're thinking, I think there's more of like a willful part to it and an automatic part to it. So when you're taking in information, so this relates to grammar in terms of the structure of grammar, not in the trivium grammar, which is can be a confusing term, but you have the grammar of things coming in, but then you have the grammar of understanding it. So you need the structure of language, and that's what grammar is. There's a certain structure to the letters being organized in a certain sequence to form words, and then there's the structure of the words sequenced in a certain way to convey a certain meaning, to convey an understanding that you want someone else to grasp. So there's that automatic process that once you know once we all intuitively understand the structure of the grammar of our particular language. We learn that as we grow up. You don't need to know what a verb is, what an adverb is, what an adjective is, what a noun. You don't need to know any of that specific structure to know it consciously. You know it intuitively through the mysteries of consciousness and the brain and all that stuff and our psychology of you picked it up as you were growing up and then you made use of it, and it intuitively you learned the structure. You learned to understand the meaning of certain sounds, and you learned to repeat those sounds to reproduce that meaning so other people can understand. So that's what I mean in an automatic way, that people can provide information, and once you receive it, you have this automatic process of being able to deconstruct the structure of those sounds or the symbols, the images on paper or on a computer, and you're able to make sense of it. You can derive some sense, some meaning from this abstraction of sequences of shapes or sequences of sounds, and that we learned in our various languages when we were growing up, or you can learn new languages when you're older. So that's the automatic part, where you're engaging in some type of thinking because you have to apply some thought to that structure of symbols or sounds coming in order to even make sense of what is even being said with what is being said. So that's an automatic thing. And then there's more the willful. You have to apply your will to, I guess it would be the second part of the epistemology I'm talking about, is how do you know what you know? So that came in, and that's the first part of knowing about something. But how do you know that it is true? Knowledge of the truth of whatever was said. And that's more where the critical thinking comes in, because we're processing information, and then we can form opinions. We can form opinions that are false. We can form opinions that are true. We can have intuitive opinions. We can have more concrete, factual opinions. And that's the, I guess, part towards the more critical phase. Because if you're, the more automatic one is where there's not really critical thinking, where you're just mindlessly accepting the structure of the info that's coming in and whatever it's conveying. So the claim is being made about what is true, what exists. And then you're going to accept that claim. So someone says, this is not true, or they're going to say why something is wrong or why something is right, etc. And then you take that in, and then you're just going to accept it. And that would be not critical thinking, because you're just taking a basic form of thinking that conveys an understanding through the structure of the language, and then you're accepting it. And this is what a lot of people engage in as a type of thinking. They're not engaging in a more critical thinking where they're criticizing, where they're skeptical, where they're more curious about the veracity of the information, or questioning it, question everything. And they're more accepting it, especially if it comes from, I'll say this first, especially if it conforms to what they already think. If their conception already has all these dots of understanding or things they think is true, some of them are true, some of them are not true, and something else comes in and oh look, this thing fits in, it doesn't contradict it, and then they're more willing to accept it because it doesn't contradict what they already accept as true. But then there's also the aspect of the information coming from a source of authority. And that's where a lot of people get into this just acceptance and not critical thinking. Because it's authoritative, could be from an expert or authority in a field or a textbook, and you don't even know who the author is, but because it's a textbook, then it carries some authority. And this is where we get into schooling, where schooling in large part teaches through textbooks, and this becomes like a doctrine. This becomes the authoritative source as the authority for what is true in reality. It could be something like geography, or you can come into aspects such as history, where you're going to accept whatever history is taught, or you're going to accept, well, that's the most one, I guess, where they'd be more manipulative. Math is more, I don't know, agnostic or benign. It's like, math works that way or not, you're going to understand it or you're not going to understand it. You don't need to really accept it. But, yeah, so I'll just finish this part. So the school, that's another part we could talk about. And so we're talking about thinking, the purpose of thinking, critical, non-critical thinking, and the role school plays in this, where there's these, where we get, I guess, indoctrinated into these doctrines, indoctrinated because these textbooks become doctrines. The teachers teach from these doctrines, and the teachers become authorities who teach the doctrines. The textbooks are the authorities because that's what you have to memorize to pass your tests, because the tests will be based on these doctrines in the textbooks and what the teachers teach. And if you don't get it right, then you fail. So it's all this part of conditioning. And, sometimes you can question things. And but usually, it's what's in the textbook. And in other classes, it's not really about that. It's more about the process, like English class. It's the process of how to write an essay, and you can write on many topics and do fiction or whatever. So it doesn't apply to everything, but some things are more, the textbook is the authority. And then I guess if you're taking things from math, where the textbook is teaching things that you can verify through the process of mathematics of how the numbers work. And then you're going to think, well, this is how it works in math, that the textbook is the authority, it's speaking truth. Then you go to history and it's like, oh, well, that's speaking truth, or some book of some author, nonfiction, and well, they must be speaking truth too because it's a book, because it's in school. So I'll pass it to you guys and have your thoughts on that part. And welcome back, Adrian. My God, I don't remember if that's your name. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, thanks. Last time my laptop was a little screwed up, so
Cool.
I'm on
You're
my
live
phone.
now.
Thank you.
Working good. Glad you got that sorted out.
All right.
All right. Go for it, guys. If you want to have any input or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to roll with what he just said. I don't know if he popped on for how long, but yeah, Kris, I'll just make it quick, and then I'd like to hear both you gentlemen as well. Yeah, like the main thing I wrote down from what you were talking about going through the indoctrination camps, through academia, lamestream, public schooling, and all that stuff. The public fooling, also, kind of thing. All these programmed thought patterns that we develop over time, and it's really hard to break those because, I mean, think about muscle memory and that kind of stuff. When you're doing things in repetition for so long, and it's hard to like break out of that habit or pattern and all this stuff. Same with the mental gymnastics and all this stuff, Flip fantastic, right? Yeah, I kind of mentioned I think last time, of just like, you ever have those wrongful thoughts that you're just like wrestling with in this night? You just want to give them a stone cold Steve stunner or whatever the hell wrestling terms. But yeah, like, we have to combat the inner tyrant, and unfortunately some of that programming just festers and spawns like these extra tyrants around us that are whispering subtle uncertainties and falsehoods all day long. What is the propaganda media machine and all this stuff, right? So that's their modus operandi, to break our minds. So we're just operating the way they want us to, and following and behaving along the lines of the narratives of all these things. So yeah, we need to be the epistemologist of ourselves as well. Not just all the information that's out there, but also what's in here. We have to have that proper gnosis of self to properly navigate our own, mind's workings and all that, and plant the proper seeds within us so we can do that for others as well, right? So, yeah. What's good, gentlemen? Adrian, you good? You settled? Good to see you. Are you trying to speak? We can't hear you. I don't know. I was trying to pass it over to you.
Yeah, I was gonna type something. Yeah, my earpiece, it might die soon, so I'm gonna be recharging it because my laptop's broken. But I'm kind of just jumping in here. I kind of have an idea of what y'all are talking about. Maybe people planting seeds and like in your subconscious and like making you think like little things that maybe you inherently just go through in life is planted in your subconscious at ages 1 through 7, and it makes you behave a certain way, and it's not even your own like uh, like idea or just programming.
I can riff off of that. I think it's very true that when we're young, our parents or the society around us, maybe the indoctrination camps, implant these, I want to call them like viruses in our brains. And they do it because the same has happened to them. And yeah, our brain picks it up, and we don't really know right from wrong because 99.9% of the people don't know that. I don't know, just like that's a rough number, but yeah, I mean, they get us when we're young. It's very unfortunate. So I think unschooling is extremely important, which is something I want to dive into. But yeah, just to read off my notes here, I wrote, yeah, you mentioned something. I think that if I, example, accept something to be true without really going through that logic process, then that is called slavery because anyone can just tell me anything. And if I believe it, then I'm not really assessing if it's right. So without that critical thinking process, it's slavery. And another thing I wrote down was I think this happened a lot during the pandemic when they released the COVID-19 virus. And I mean, I haven't really done all the research on it, but I get a sense that it was definitely planned and people didn't question it and the whole world was locked down. But if people questioned it, then we would get to the truth. And I mean, the information is out there, so it's not even hidden. And then you also mentioned authorities. I think we should question authorities, especially to make sure that what we understand as truth is actually truth, which is what we're talking about right now, the epistemology. So I think this is extremely important. Even if authorities speak truth to us, we have to make sure we know it's truth. We have to check it. And I think that, yeah, I just wrote down here that I got jabbed up during the COVID-19. I wasn't awake then because I misplaced trust in my dad. I asked him, "What would you do? Like, what do you think I should do?" So based off on his, what he would do is what I did, and I think other people can do that too or have done that. And I just want to say, instead of placing my trust in someone else, I'm going to place it upon me because I'm in control of using my faculties and assessing if something is true or not. Just using the epistemology. And I think arrogant people that say, "Oh, this is the truth," and they just want to hear information that supports that truth and not information that I would suppose, contradict it or go against it. I think we need to keep an open mind and discern all information to find out whether it's true or not. And we have to be humble. We have to embrace humility, because without it, then I think a lot of bad things can happen. And I think that's all I have right now.
Oh, God damn it. The audio went off by itself. I checked it earlier. I don't know why this is happening. Jesus Christ. All right.
Oh,
I don't know
fuck.
why this keeps happening, because I checked it earlier and it was like, okay, it's not red. And then I come back and now it's red. Maybe it turns it off after I don't talk for a while.
Damn, so it wasn't playing in the live stream then?
No, not in the live stream. Only you guys were privileged to hear that. So,
Damn.
yeah. Yeah, so I'll summarize what I was talking about. Won't get too much into it. I brought up points about Jerry talking about the slave mind, where thoughts can enslave you because it's making you where you're getting controlled by your thoughts. So the thoughts grow into things where something is planted and it grows. So you have your actions that grow from that. And there's also the aspect of something that grows that is true and something that grows that is false. So when the seed is falsity, it grows into falsity, which is unreal. And then we're going to be creating unreal things in reality. So reality has a lot of unreal things that shouldn't be there. And yeah, so that's how the things that are planted in us that we don't critically think about can control us, because, you know, there's also that saying of related to belief. What is it? You don't have beliefs, beliefs have you. It's in this line of thinking where the belief has you because it has control of you. So these things that you're not critical about, they can have you, they can control you because they, you know, what's internal, you know, mentalism leads to the external of your behavior. So these things that are internal will lead to that external behavior. And yeah, the truth as a religion, I also mentioned truth as a religion, the only legitimate religion as religare, because it's to bind to. So you can be bound to these beliefs, these thoughts, these things that are planted that are false that lead to your behavior. And the only legitimate thing to be bound to is truth. So truth can also be something that can control you, but it's the only legitimate thing, because if you have truth, it's also going to lead to your behavior, so it's going to control the outcome of your behavior, but in a positive way, just like positive religion. Okay. And then I was bringing up another thing that Jerry said about the pandemic and fear. Well, he didn't mention fear, but the people weren't questioning things. So I'm bringing up that's because of fear. That fear kills questioning. It's the mind killer, the thought killer, referencing Dune with Muad'Dib, Paul Atreides, and no, fear is the mind killer because it really does kill the whole capacity of your thinking, of the enlarged questioning, of your enlarged thought capacity. So it shrinks your mind. That's why Passio relates it as opposed to love is the expansive force, fear is the constricting force. To make things more unconscious as opposed to conscious expansion and awareness, it's more constricting, because when you're in fear, you're only focusing on the security and the safety. So the security and the safety is what you're going to be looking for, and you're going to be looking for an escape for the thing you fear to regain that safety and security. So you're not going to be questioning, you know, necessarily, is it true? I'm not saying that's impossible when you fear something, but in general, people are going to be looking for an escape hatch. They're going to be trying to analyze and critically think about the thing. So that's where government comes in. I think that's where we were at before I realized I was muted. That, the government plays into this well. They know how it works. You know, fear has been known for a long time as a good way to control people. And so it was good for the controllers. They have this thing during the pandemic. Derek Bros found something interesting. It's called the parasite stress theory, and this relates to it, where they did studies that say there's a parasite. I forget what it was exactly, but related to parasites and viruses, that you can get people to do things they wouldn't normally do when you put them in fear. I think that was essentially the gist of it. So it's very interesting. You can go look that up. I'd have to refresh my memory on all of that. But Yeah, so there's this aspect that's known, it's in modern psychology, probably known about it for thousands and thousands of years, that fear is a good way to control the people, make them afraid of something, give them a boogeyman. Last episode I think we mentioned terror. Get people to be afraid of terrorism, and they'll give up their safety, and they'll give up their rights, they'll give up their freedom to purchase temporary safety and security, the illusion of safety and security, the illusion of order. Yeah. And the next thing that I wanted to bring up was related to epistemology. We've been going around it, is the belief in truth versus verifiably knowing what is true. What I mean in belief in truth is that you're going to believe that something is true. So I've gone into this in previous presentations on belief, on what is belief. Because as we've been talking about, things that come in is just information. It's knowledge at a basic level. You understand what is being said. So you have knowledge about something, but you don't have knowledge of it being true or not. So until you have knowledge of it being true by knowing it's true, by verifying it, actually knowing it, then you can engage in a miscategorization where you can say, that is true. But do you know it's true? Well, if you don't know, then all you're doing is believing it is true. Now, it might be true, but that's not the point we're talking about. We're not talking about actually being true in this context. We're talking about the belief in something being true, which is what most people engage in regarding things they know about. They believe them to be true, because they're not questioning the various things that are said in the news or from authoritative sources. So they're just believing things that come in. As I mentioned, can have all those points of everything, all these data points of everything we've taken in our lives, and something new comes in and it seems to fit. So then people correlate it with this correspondence, and because it seems to fit, then they're like, oh yeah, okay. And then they take that into and they categorize it as truth, but they haven't verified it. So then it's actually a belief. But then they're going to talk about it and talk about it to other people. And when they're going to talk about it, they're not going to talk about it as a belief, because when you talk about something as a belief, then you properly categorize it. When you talk about it, you're going to say, I believe, da-da-da-da-da. I think that, da-da-da-da-da. I feel that. These are all things that reference beliefs and things. But when you're just saying something, you're making a statement, what you're doing is you're making a categorical claim of something being true when you're just stating it as such. And a lot of the things, most of the things people will state as such, as truth, as just the way something, as what truth is, the way reality is or existence is going to be these truths that they've believed in. Again, I'll restate that, is the knowledge that they believe in as true. Now, the knowledge could be true, but it could be false, but they believe it's true, and then they're going to propagate it as if it's true. So they're going to talk about it as if it's true, and then other people who are going to trust them are going to potentially believe it's true as well. And that's what belief comes down to, as I've defined it, is belief is a trust, a loyalty, a faith in something being true. And when you have trust in another person, when you have faith in them, when you believe in them, when they tell you things, you're going to believe what they're telling you is true. And then, well, that's the problem of what we have in the world, is people taking things in uncritically, believing they're true, and then telling other people who then believe they're true. And we have a bunch of people living in the clouds, so to speak, where just everything, the structure of the world as you see it, your worldview and the self-view is detached from grounding in reality. Because a lot of the things you believe are just connected amongst each other, but there's very little grounding in reality, and it's mostly just belief, that a superstructure of belief that you've created, and as I refer to that as living in the clouds as opposed to living on the ground. So when we're talking about knowing if something is true, verifying it. Well, that's the trivium, where the bottom part with knowledge, with understanding, and the logic and processing is asking the question why. The who, what, where, when is the knowledge, the input, the grammar, and the logic and the understanding is the why. Why is that true? What makes this statement true? Someone says something. What makes it true? Why is that true? And that's that part of epistemology that I mentioned in the beginning, is how do you know that something is true? And that's what's lacking a lot of, I find, in the world, is engaging in this process of even asking yourself. You could ask someone, okay, well, why is that true? You're telling me this. So you could ask yourself that, oh, they told me this, and you could try to think about it yourself. But one thing is interesting to try is when people speak, they just make these categorical claims of what is in existence, what is in reality, what is true. So they're just going to make statements, but they're never going to be like, I'm stating this, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and this is true because da-da-da-da-da-da. They don't do that second part. So when people speak and say things, the part that you're supposed to be doing is asking yourself, well, why is this true? What makes it true? But then you can also verbalize it back to them, and you're like, okay, you just told me this, but do you know why this is true? Do you know what makes the thing that you just said true? Have you engaged in that process? And, then they could do some of the work for you and give you the answer as to why it is or isn't true. But it's something that can make for deeper conversations and catch people maybe off guard, where, because in a lot of conversations, it's arguments can manifest as a result. Some person says this and you're like, well, no, that's not true, and da-da-da, and you give the counter argument. But your counter argument is just a counter claim. So there's claim one and then there's counter claim. But when you make your counter claim, you're not saying why it's true. You're just making a counter claim. So then it's just people making claim upon claims, but no one's backing it up with a logical derivation to understand why it's true. So I think that's one part of why there can be a lot of these arguments and confusion, is people don't go down to a deeper or higher philosophical level, however you want to look at it, and examine these propositions, because that's what we're making. We're making propositions of, I propose this is what is in reality. I propose this is true. We don't state it that way, but when everyone says things, that's essentially what you're conveying to the other person, is I'm making a claim about truth, and here is my claim. And then you receive it, and you can agree with it, disagree, or question it, and then agree or disagree later on after you question it more. All right. What do you guys think about that? What say you?
Adrian, go for it.
That's kind of what I've been doing this whole time, with trying to verify maybe if my understanding of the trivium is correct, if my worldview is correct, if I'm actually even on the right path. So in order to think and to actually come to like real conclusions, one must be willing to question themselves and have a developed mind, and seek to use maybe the truth that may be uncomfortable to better it, so you can advance towards maybe discovering something many people haven't, which is probably how to get to any real truth of whatever situation that you're in. I even have a book. It's like, the title of it is just, Is It True? And I'm just seeing if any of the knowledge that I have of the trivium, or if the nature of my heart, the stone the builders rejected, is actually like scientifically valid.
Got to get that validation and possibly some cross confirmation and utilizing your imagination or imagination, if you will. So yeah, brother. Bon courage, as we say in France. It's better than saying good luck out there. Break a leg. No, actually, like bon courage. Like it's like good courage. Like we have to be courageous in facing ourselves, and as Jerry said, like being humble with admitting our shortcomings and mistakes, and oh shit, made a classic blunder. I believe some shit is like trusting the experts, quote unquote, right, and all that stuff. Going back to the COVID crap and this and that, and it goes back into what I was saying in the beginning of having an eclectic perspective of information and what you take in, and not be mistaken, because when you're acting on those falsehoods, it could be a grave error, like with the needlecraft and that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, it's really fucked up. Like 17 million people passed away because of this experimental bullshit, because they trusted things that were like relentlessly force fed to them via the media and what they were feeding you. And that's really a shame. And it's like, yeah, Kris, going back to what you were saying and this was on a previous one that I really wanted to join, of like, why we have to ask ourselves why all these things. Ask and then try to answer. Right? Going back to the Matrix, that classic scene with the Merovingian, remember that stingy man, as I like to say. They're having dinner and he's pouting about with his snooty fruity tooty French wine sipping stuff, and then like, you guys are here but you have no power. You don't even know why you're here. You think you do, but you don't. You're just here because you were told to go and see me because you're looking for a key maker. But why do you need this key maker? Like, do you have the proper keys to unlock the knowledge of what your purpose is exactly? But apply that to your life. What is your purpose in life? Have you unlocked that dharma within you, in a sense, So yeah, are you the expert of yourself? Or are you gonna, trust and believe? Are you gonna be the lie Eve of as I just stated before, right? So yeah, and Mark Passio talks about, he probably said it in his natural law seminar, in that belief is the enemy of truth, right? Is it better to actually know something or believe in something, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, and we got to reprogram all these programmed thought patterns that we have floating around our minds. And if you think it's just some kind of one-off, you're dead wrong, because these things, there's residual bits and pieces of these thought patterns that we had of like, oh, A, B, C, D, E, F, and whatever. But we might have been deaf to the actual truth of the proper sequence of the line of taking it through the trivium and understanding there's all this information floating through us, yet there's a proper golden thread that is the truth, right? You think of I'm thinking about Kris's great infograph that he really brought more to life, of one from Mark Passio, of the frequency of truth and this and that. Like, how many times is it going by and hitting that line of truth? And that, think about those like brain waves, thought patterns, and this and that. Is it just like is it a big old slog going across the log, or is it actually like, bam, you're on fucking point, like, or is it just like, like kind of like that? You're more parallel with truth. It's not a flat line, but you know what I mean, right? It's that proper heartbeat to agape with the proper care, the lost principle, implemented and integrated through so much knowledge and inner work that people have done to come into being on a daily basis of just trying to be aligned as much as possible and this and that. And it all goes back to one state of mind, going back to mentalism. And yeah, epistemology, there's so much knowledge out there. And unfortunately that, even, in the medical realm, going back to the Rona stuff of just how things are so paltered, meaning, there are certain, truths that they're hinging off of, yet there's so many distortions of it. So we have to do our due diligence to sift through the facts and lies, and sift around and all these things. It's that hour. It's 4:00 in the morning. I gotta catch some Z's, yo. But yeah, Kris, always a pleasure, honor, and gentlemen, everyone else, much love, y'all, and take care. Thank you so much, Kris. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.
Have a good one. Have a good sleep.
I need it. Yeah, thank you.
Good night, Derek.
Ciao.
Later.
I mean, I suppose I can speak on that really quick. Pass it back to you, Kris, unless you have something to say. All right, I'll just go.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, for me, for example, when I just heard Derek say the word palter, and I know he explained what that meant, but I don't know what that means. So I have choices. I can go on living without really knowing what that means and just take his word for it, or I can look it up and actually know it. So I think that's kind of what you're saying, Kris. It's like, oh, I can believe this, but if I don't verify it, then I don't actually know. And I think I want to make the comparison of knowledge, or the Mark Passio quote, which is, knowing and not doing is not knowing and not caring, essentially. So there's this false belief that, oh yeah, I know what's going on, but if your actions aren't reflecting it, then you don't really know. But yeah, I mean, great points have been made. I don't really have anything else to add.
Cool. Yeah, I don't like that quote because it's more of this. I call it. I forget what I've referred to them as, but I'll call them here like mystical truisms. These things that seem paradoxical and they seem like they're. People like to use these paradoxical. So if you're saying you're gonna know but you don't know, well, it doesn't make sense. But there's all these things in these like spiritual works, and I view them as like intellectual, trying to be clever. Oh, that's what I think I referred to it. It's like people trying to be clever and they word things in like paradoxical, contradictory ways because they think they're being clever, and it just makes things more confusing. Because to know and not to know, knowing and not doing is not knowing. Well, no, you still know because you know it. Knowledge, the input, the grammar, you have it. And then if you don't do anything with it, well, it just means you're not acting upon it. To know and not to do is to not care. That's accurate. And you could say it's to not be wise, and that's accurate. But it's not to not know, because you know. You can't know and not know at the same time when you're talking about something. So to know and not do is to not know. I don't like these statements. I got to be 10 years ago I liked it. I even wrote about it and to like explain it the way Passio explained it. But now I'm like, I don't like them because they just make things more confusing. And so it should be, to know and not to do is to not care and not be wise. Because if you know, then you know the thing, whatever X. It's not that you don't know because you're not doing anything with X. And yes, you do know. It's just that you're not following it through in the trivium process of knowledge, understanding of wisdom, and the wisdom is action. So to know and not to do, well, you're not doing anything with it, so you don't have wisdom, and probably because you don't care enough to do anything with it, so you don't have care, and not wise, but you know. And belief is the enemy of knowledge. I would say no, belief is the enemy of truth. Because again, knowledge, you can take in knowledge and you can just have the knowledge, or you can believe in it. Believe in it as being true, but not that it is true. So it's not necessarily a negative. Beliefs aren't a negative thing, but they are. The problem is, as I've stated, when you take a belief and you categorize it as truth because you haven't engaged in that process, and it's this understanding. What I'm trying to get people to arrive at is an understanding of the difference between the word belief and the word truth, and how to accurately use them. Because you've engaged in this epistemological process of verification to know what is in reality. So you could look at the two knowledges of knowledge about something. Well, that's indirect knowledge. And you could look at the knowledge of something being true as direct knowledge, direct experience. So other people can convey their experience, but you weren't there. You don't know if it would actually happen, so you're going to have belief and trust and loyalty in what they're saying and in the information they conveyed, and you're going to say, oh, that's true. But you don't really know. So this is how people need to categorize things better, is everything that comes in is knowledge, and you can understand what they're saying, and you can understand it conceptually and go deeper into it, and you may not be able to verify it, and you may be able to verify it. And if you can't verify it, then you could also engage in a healthy form of belief. Now, this is what I view as the healthy form of belief, is where you're going to believe that something is true, but you're consciously aware that you're believing in it. Now, what I've talked about before was this process where people are not making that categorical distinction, where things that are actually beliefs in them, because they have not verified them, they're going to take them as truth. So they're going to say, I have truth of this, and they're going to talk about it and make claims about it to other people. But what they actually have is a belief because they have not verified it. And again, I'm not talking about whether it actually is true or false. It could be true, it could be false. But they believe what they have is truth. Now, the healthy form of belief is, everyone has these, where you can believe, well, I don't know if everyone has them, but if you're making the distinction where you're going to categorize something, you're going to say, oh, there's this information, there's this idea, this concept, I think that's true. Now, you're not saying it is true. That's the difference, where you're saying, I think it's true, I feel it's true, I believe it's true, but I recognize that I don't know that it is true. I am recognizing that I don't know it's true. I'm not saying it is true. I'm not making a claim that it is true. I'm not saying reality is that way, that existence is that way, or that it was that way in the past, because I don't know. But saying, I believe it's true. So that's the healthy form of belief, where you're going to recognize that you believe something is true, but you're not going to talk about it as if it is true. And that's when you're accurately distinguishing between whatever topic or concept or thing alleged in the past. You're going to categorize it as, well, I believe this happened, I believe this is true, and something else where you know it's true. And if everyone could engage in that process, then that would help with this problem of the inability to discern truth from falsehood, and the two ways to be fooled, of accepting things that aren't true and rejecting things that are true. Because things that come in that are true, instead of, we've talked about it in the shadow work and cognitive dissonance and stuff, that you don't have to reject it. You could just say, okay, this is coming in, and just say, I don't know. See, you understand how to categorize it and how the word truth can actually be applied. Because you're knowing that you can only use the word truth and make claims of truth when you have actually verified that it is true. And if you haven't, then you're making a claim from a position of belief of something being true. And if we can accurately discern that and categorize all the things that we've taken in, and when we convey it to people and when we talk about them, to say, I believe this, I think this, I feel this way about this, versus this is, or just stating something. When you're just stating something, you're making a claim of truth. And if we can discern those two, then it helps us along that effort of discerning truth from falsity. As you can say something is true, you can say something is false. When you say something is false, that's still making a claim of truth. You're saying that reality is a certain way, or that something was a certain way, like this never happened, or this can't happen, that this doesn't work this way. Or you're saying something is false, but you're actually making a statement of truth as well by saying something is false. You're saying that it is true that this is not true. Yeah, so I guess that wraps things up on epistemology. Probably other things that we could talk about. Like I've never done a formalized presentation. It's in the plans of something I want to do. But all this is good fuel for that eventual work that I'll do, and maybe I'll think of other stuff. And we have the last thing I'll mention is Yoda, you must unlearn what you have learned. This aspect of questioning everything, and in our schooling that we've tacitly accepted as true. And that's part of the awakening we go through, that we have to question these things that we've previously thought are true. We have to reevaluate. It could be 9/11 or something else that brings you to that moment of realization that if you were wrong about this, if you accepted this thing that was false as being true, well, what else have you accepted in your life as being true, but was actually false, that it was a misrepresentation, that it was a lie? And so you need to reevaluate things. So that quote from Star Wars is good. Unlearn what you have learned. And another thing that reminds me is Lloyd Pye's book, Everything You Know Is Wrong. That's another false statement. It's, I guess, more of a, what is it? What are those things? I don't remember the term for trying to catch people's attention. Clickbait. There you go. Yeah, that's like a clickbait title. Everything you know is wrong. Not everything you know is wrong, but a large part of what you know is wrong. And it's like a clickbait title. That a lot of the things you think are true aren't true. So time to reevaluate and really question and verify what you think is true is actually true, and then you get a better grounding in reality to make better decisions. And that's the ultimate importance of epistemology, is to lead to better behavior and actions by actually knowing what is true versus what is not true, and making those accurate categorizations and delineating consciously delineating between something that you can believe in is true, or that you know is true, or that you outright don't know, and that you don't believe in being true, and you just don't know if it is true or not. And maybe you could believe something is false as well, or you could be like, I don't know what to believe. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's false. I don't believe it to be true. I don't believe it to be false. I'm open to it being true or false, and right now I can't and I don't have an informed opinion to make on the subject, and that's valid too. Being agnostic and not knowing if something is true or not. Yeah, if you guys wanted to say something else, and I guess we'll end it there.
I'll just say that I think it's brilliant to hear somebody talk about something I've been going through for a bit, and just say it in a way that kind of reminds me of me in a situation, maybe holding on to or clinging on to a belief and trying to live life that way, but it didn't work out, and you have to change that belief and verify what is true and stick with what's true. And how to do that is obviously using the scientific method. You have ideas, and how my mind works, I just write stuff out, happens. So I find that method very effective. I like just sitting somewhere where I can, even on my feet, I can think of some ideas. But it's very helpful to sit somewhere, maybe a little boring, and write out all kinds of ideas that you have. See what you think is real and what isn't, and try to determine which is which by testing those ideas. And an example is of when I thought I had it all figured out with the trivium and maybe enlightenment. Like, there was a time where I was, vulnerable, and I thought maybe I was just, that was the only, I thought that was just our fate as maybe anarchists, but no, I was wrong. You could be like hardcore, like warrior, like as an anarchist, or you could be like you could build up your soul as well, if I'm correct. And just the idea of enlightenment, like what is my idea of enlightenment true? Well, can I verify it with another person, or maybe somebody's material, or maybe my way of running the trivium? Is it the right way? Like, is it the real way that's actually going to get me to a real conclusion that is satisfactory, that is actually true? Or is it just going to lead me to doom and damnation? So yeah, that's kind of what I have to say.
Cool. That's a interesting process. Write it down, and then you have something that you can come back to and think about, and it's not just random thoughts popping through your head, and you can keep processing and not forget the things that you want to verify. Anything you want to say, Jerry?
Yeah, I just love what Adrian said about questioning, right? His thought process. I think that's key. Something I do a lot. So, hey, is this true? Why is it true? I mean, start with why, right? That's the fuel. That'll give you fuel towards finding out the truth. And I like journaling. So I'll journal. I'll write the questions out, and even make a map, kind of like you do, Kris. You have the visual, so you can connect the dots. I think that's very helpful. I just want to say thank you, Kris, for doing this episode, and I'm glad it was great. So have a good night.
Cool. Well, thanks you guys for joining in and taking part in the discussion live, and thanks for commenters and people in the chat and anyone else who was just passively viewing. Hope you gained some value from the content, and I guess got you thinking more about things. And that's what we're trying to do, is this whole last part is learning how to think better. So hopefully you're thinking about learning how to think, or thinking about thinking, and improving that process. And probably I don't know. Next week. Well, we'll leave it open. I don't know what the title's going to be. We'll talk about something more on the shadow work side. So next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you guys back here if you want to come back. And with that said, say have a good night.